Hello and welcome to Reporters, the show that brings you all the very best reports from our correspondents all around the world. I'm Melissa Bell. Now, the line that divides Mexico from the United States is said to be the most frequently crossed international border in the world, with about 250 million people crossing it every year. Many others, of course, fail, and although much has been made of the troubles facing those would-be illegal immigrants that approach it, much less is known about the perils that face them at what is often the start of their journey at the other end of Mexico. And yet, the railway line that leads north is in the hands of a ruthless drug cartel known as the Zetas, a network so powerful and well-established that the authorities often have no choice but to collaborate and to turn a blind eye. Here's a report by our correspondents Laurence Cuvillier, Mathieu Comin and Johan Grillo.
A dangerous journey to a foreign land starts here. These migrants are from Central America. They've walked across the Mexican border and now they have to jump on this freight train to reach the United States. They face many risks along the tracks. Half of all the migrants were attacked during their journey, and more than 1 in 10 are kidnapped, tortured and held for ransom. Maria has not managed to board the moving train for the 5th time. She's pregnant and she and her husband Walter are worried.
It goes too quickly for women.
After leaving their home in Honduras, they took a week to arrive here. When at last they reached the railroad, they were met by a nasty surprise.
We were attacked and they took all our money from us. We've got no money left for food. We have been begging here for 5 days, but no one gives us anything.
The assailants even took their shoes. They have to wear some old sandals they found on the track.
Well, all we have to do now is walk on.
Thousands of such stories can be heard along the railway. We follow the tracks until we reach Coatzacoalcos, 300 kilometers north of the border. Many migrants change trains here. We meet 3 migrants from Guatemala. They're recovering from a painful episode. Armed men stopped their train and the youngest took a beating.
I climbed down and ran, so not to give them what I had.
And what happened?
They caught up with me and started to beat me up.
In the attack, about 30 migrants lost everything they had.
I caught the train in Tenosique and my attackers showed up just after.
Who were they?
We could not see their faces as they were wearing masks. They hit that young man. When we stepped down from the train, there were 2 bodies on the track. No, 3. 2 women and a man, tied up and decapitated.
Hector was forced to give away the little money he hid in his shoes, but he still wants to continue on his way to the American dream.
We're all afraid as we travel. If anything happens to us, we will never see our families again. All of us. So when we decide to go, we're taking a real decision. We hope to see them again, but we may as well never come back.
Too scared to file a complaint to police, as they have no papers to travel in Mexico. Human rights worker Eldorado listens to their accounts. In the last 3 years, he has seen attacks on migrants reach alarming levels. He's also seen the assailants use a feared new weapon, mass kidnappings. The attackers hold the migrants and phone their relatives for ransom money.
This is the place. This is the house where it took place.
How many people were there?
33 people kidnapped.
Last summer, a similar mass kidnapping took place near to where Eldorado lives.
They brought the migrants by night. They packed them on the ground floor. The showers were on, we could hear them, and that's all. They were detaining them in the dining room, downstairs.
Were they tortured?
I suppose so, as we could hear them moaning with pain, but we could not know who was tortured.
Everybody knows who these attackers are, the Zetas. This brutal gang was formed in the late 1990s by elite soldiers who deserted from the Mexican army and turned to crime. They are known today as one of the most organized and violent factions of the Mexican drug cartels. Since 2007, they have terrorized migrants along the railway. The testimonies of their victims often mention torture. We follow the railway south until we reach Tenosique, 50 kilometers from the border with Guatemala. It is a stronghold of the Zetas. The city lives in fear and almost nobody wants to speak with us. There are many here who work as so-called hawks or spies for the Zetas. A week earlier, 3 corpses of migrants were found tied up on the track. We enter a station near the city. The only train of the day has come to a stop. We have to be careful about who we speak to, even with the migrants.
We travel because we have to, but others are here to steal. They're criminals.
This man is right to be suspicious. The Zetas pay young people to mix with migrants and to spot those who belong to the more wealthy families. That is to say, the least poor. We go to look for a ranch where a mass kidnapping took place last year. 2 young men say they will take us there. They climb into the car but do not want to be filmed. When we mention the Zetas, one of them speaks English. He doesn't want his friend to understand.
I don't want to hear about you asking me, you know, because it's my neighbor, it's my neighborhood, but I don't, you know.
You don't know, you're not sure about him? Oh.
You know?
You're not sure about him?
No.
Really?
Really. Those people see work on the each town, you know. Some people go on the train. Maybe you talking with them. You never know. You never know.
After a 20-minute ride on the dirt road, we reach the ranch. But the 2 young men won't go any further. It all happened last July. With the help of the train driver, the Zetas stopped the wagons in front of the gate and took 53 people hostage. Weeds have grown over the Victoria ranch today, but marks the horrors the migrants went through remain. During a week they were tied up, tortured and starved. 2 of them tried to escape. They were shot dead in front of the eyes of the others. The few kilometers of railroad around Tenosique are one of the most dangerous places in Mexico. Friar BLAS and his community of friars are among the few who dare venture here. They know the methods of the Zetas well.
All along the track there are bandits who make them pay just for the chance to wait for the train. Then when they're ready to jump on, they're made to pay again. It takes between 100 and 300 pesos to get up. If they refuse to pay, they're pushed down on the track.
Migrants waiting along the track welcome the friars and the food they bring to them. Many travellers have gone for days without a meal, but with so many attacks, it has now become more difficult to bring them aid.
As there have been many cases of kidnappings here, they don't stay here anymore. They prefer to go and hide farther away.
Migrants have passed here recently. We follow the rails to meet them.
Here comes the train. Clear the way. Come to the side.
We climb up the embankment to let the train pass and make sure the migrants are not in any danger. Everything seems to be okay, and we continue on our way. But then we see suspicious human shadows ahead, and we have to turn back.
The train has stopped, and they didn't climb, so probably they are not migrants, but kidnappers or robbers. And as the place is rather dangerous, we'd better turn back.
The friars carry goodwill, but no guns, and they are powerless against a gang like the Zetas.
It's a well-organized network that has succeeded in imposing itself by fear on the population, and that has succeeded in infiltrating government institutions. And this is the reason why they cannot be eradicated. The authorities that do not work for them just do not mention them. And those that are involved, well, here either the authorities enter the organization or they shut their mouths.
We are now a few kilometers away from the border. On the road we meet dozens of migrants who have walked into Mexico from Guatemala. A well-paid job in the United States inspires these migrants to take such risks. In the village of El Triunfo, we meet these young Hondurans. They've been waiting for the train for 2 days. There's normally a train a day, but nobody knows when it is due, so they must wait and keep a lookout.
We pray God to keep an eye on us. We don't want to fall into their hands.
Have any of your friends had problems with organised crime?
No.
No kidnapping?
Well, I know of some, but it is better not to speak about them.
This is the first trip north for Melvin, Guilmer and Fernando. They've been on the road for 5 days, and they have just enough money in their pockets to buy food for their journey. Early in the morning, their train finally arrives. They think they're going to have to climb on the moving wagon, but the train suddenly stops in front of them. This is unexpected and they run towards the village. But it seems to be a false alarm, and although they are scared, they decide to climb on. If all goes well, they will spend about 24 hours on board and then change trains in Coatzacoalcos.
Look after yourselves.
We follow their wagon on for 150 kilometers. They wave at us at the crossings. About 250 migrants from Central America are traveling along with them. All goes well at first, but at the end of the day they get into a dangerous situation. The train has stopped to change engines 2 kilometers away from a station. Night is falling and they're in a forested area away from any towns. The defenceless migrants are an easy and lucrative prey for the Zetas.
We only trust the 3 of us.
And you have no way to defend yourselves?
Yes, we have one. Look. Even if you are weak, this journey makes you strong. You understand?
This is the last we see of them. They say they will call us on their arrival in Coatzacoalcos, but they never phone. We don't have any way to contact them. If anything happened, they'll probably never file a complaint. With people too scared to speak out, thousands of tragedies are lost in silence along these tracks.
That report there from our correspondents Laurence Cuvillier and Mathieu Comin. Well, we can now go to Mexico City to speak to our correspondent Laurence Cuvillier. Laurence, first of all, in that report, what was very clear was that the people who are trying to head north seem very conscious of the dangers that they're facing, and yet they still carry on going in droves. Why is that?
Well, they all gave us the same answer. They have no choice. The Central American countries were badly hit by the financial crisis, and the situation is even worse in Honduras since the coup d'etat which occurred last June. We must keep in mind that the money sent from the United States by those migrants is the very first source of income for almost all these countries. So indeed, they are all well conscious of the danger they are facing. I haven't met one single migrant who didn't have a friend or a relative who was kidnapped and ransomed, but they are ready to face the risk, whatever it takes. That's what they told us.
Now, the other thing that was very clear from your report is that this group, this criminal gang, the Zetas, seem to be at once invisible and omnipresent. What did you have to do to protect yourself as you went about your filming?
Well, it's almost impossible to protect oneself from those Zetas. We're almost sure that a couple of hours after we started the report, they already knew that we were there. They have eyes everywhere. Taxi drivers work for them, as well as shopkeepers and even policemen. Many testimonies by migrants mention policemen among the kidnappers themselves. So really it is hard to imagine, but you really cannot trust anybody out there. So what we did to protect ourselves is that we didn't tell anybody where we were going, when we were going, and we were also advised not to interview anybody among the local authorities, because if that person from the local authorities had links with Los Zetas, then it would have put us in very serious troubles.
Dealing, Laurence, with that local perspective in particular, you followed this train line from the very south to the very north. How did the locals deal with this criminal gang that is really living within their midst?
Well, these people live as people live in any Mexican city controlled by a drug cartel that is in constant fear and mistrust. They even mistrust their own neighbors. Los Zetas also threaten and kidnap some local inhabitants, and some people work for them not because they are paid, but because they are threatened to death if they don't do so. And for example, local journalists never sign their articles when they mention Los Zetas. It is too dangerous for them. And we tried to interview some local journalists, but none of them accepted the proposal.
Well, very briefly, Laurence, because we're running out of time, I'm afraid, what do you think can be done against these kidnappings to bring these criminal gangs back into line?
Well, the problem is the Zetas are much wealthier than the authorities themselves. The kidnappings brings them $50 million a year because they kidnap more than 20,000 migrants, and the average ransom they ask for a migrant is $2,500. So I'm only talking about kidnappings. You can add all the money they make with the assaults and the racket along the railway. So this money gives them impunity and gives them all the possibilities they want to buy the silence of the authorities.
Laurence Cuvillier speaking to us from Mexico City. Thanks very much indeed for being with us. Thanks also for that report. That is the end of the show. We're out of time, I'm afraid. We'll be back, though, next week with another edition of Reporters. I do hope you'll join us then. Goodbye for now.